My name is Brandon James. This week, we move from the isolation of the tomb, where the warmth of a shared encounter in John 20:19 through 31 happens. In a world that's often partitioned by fear and locked doors of our own making, this story reveals a God who bypasses our barriers to offer a breath of peace and a hand of connection. So, here's my reflection. A few weeks ago, I went to the Mall of America. I'd heard about this place for years because people would talk about going on family vacations to the mall. I knew that it was huge, that there were so many stores. I'd heard rumors of a roller coaster in this place. But just hearing about it and seeing pictures and seeing videos doesn't really capture what's happening. You can hear about it, but until you actually see it, you don't understand. When I walked inside, I realized pretty quickly that those pictures and those stories didn't capture it. It was bigger than I imagined, louder. It wasn't as busy because I went on the middle of a weekday, but I found myself stopping just to look around and make sure that I knew where I came from so that I could get out of there when I was done. All of the information that I had about it was true, but it wasn't the same as experiencing it. And that's a little bit like Thomas in the story found in John 20. The other disciples, they'd seen Jesus. They were telling Thomas that we've seen the Lord, but for Thomas, hearing their story wasn't enough. He says honestly, unless I see the marks of the nails in his hands and I put my fingers in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I won't believe. Thomas isn't pretending to have faith. He doesn't say what he thinks he's supposed to say. He tells the truth. He wants to see. And if we're honest, many of us know that feeling. That faith can feel abstract until we experience something for ourselves. But the good news of this story is that Jesus isn't afraid of Thomas's doubt. When the story begins, the disciples are gathered behind locked doors. They're afraid. That detail, it matters because the resurrection has happened, but they don't know what comes next. The one they followed has been crucified. The authorities who killed Jesus could easily come looking for them. So they lock the door. And then Jesus appears among them, not with anger or disappointment, not with a lecture about where they should have been. He simply says, "Peace be with you." It's this gentle moment. Jesus meets their fear with peace, and he says it again, "Peace be with you." Sometimes peace needs to be spoken more than once. Thomas isn't there that first night. We don't know why. Maybe he needed space. Maybe he was grieving. Maybe he couldn't bear to sit with the other disciples once again. But a week later, when the disciples are gathered again, Jesus again shows up. And this time he turns directly to Thomas. And he says, "Put your fingers here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side." See, Jesus is meeting Thomas exactly where he is. Not with scolding, not with shame, just an invitation. And Thomas responds with one of the clearest confessions of faith in the whole gospel when he says, "My Lord and my God." Most of us are never going to see the wounds in Jesus' hands the way that Thomas did. But that doesn't mean that God's story stopped happening. It's still unfolding all around us. Sometimes it shows up in quiet ways. I've seen people in churches bring meals to someone who just got out of the hospital. I've seen someone sit with a friend who was having a hard mental health day and just needed someone to listen. I've seen people show up for others when life gets heavy. And those moments might seem ordinary, but they are all a part of God's story. Sometimes it shows up in bigger moments, like a relationship that begins to heal after a long time of tension. Someone finding the courage to ask for help, a community that rallies around someone who needs support. Those are the places where we start to recognize that God is still at work. And that's really what I want us to notice, of learning to notice where God is, learning to pay attention to God around us, learning to see where God is already moving in the stories around us. Near the end of the passage, Jesus says something important. He says, "As the Father has sent me, so I send you." That means the story doesn't end in a locked room. The disciples are sent out, not because they have everything figured out. And it's not because they'll never feel afraid again, but it's because they have experienced the peace of Christ. And now they are sent to carry that peace into the world. to bring peace where there's fear, hope where there's despair, love in the ordinary places of everyday life. And that's still our calling today, to notice God's story, to join it, and to share it. Hey, once again, my name is Brandon James. You can find me on social media at brandonjames.com, or you can go to Enter, Join, Share. And if you go to Enter, Join, Share, you can get a free story guide on this. And a story guide is a discussion guide, something you can use to further your own faith, to reflect on the scripture, or use it as a group. So if you want to get a free story guide, you can go to enterjoinshare.org.